Hi.
Hey,
Hey, let me
how
do
are you?
good. How are you guys? Good to see you. Hi,
We
Sig.
good.
Hi, Liza. I haven't seen you for a while.
Likewise.
We are in a very boring hotel lobby in
Well,
Philadelphia, USA.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Are you drawing, Signe?
No,
Let me adjust this. Oh, sorry.
not at the moment. I'm so delighted to see you, and I look forward to seeing Anne too.
She's right
Haven't seen
there.
any cartoon, and this fellow, he just
Yeah.
wandered into Philadelphia,
Can you guys
As
can you
one
guys
does,
see
right?
me?
as one does.
Hello, Anne.
So
Hi.
where are you two?
I'm in New York.
And
Huh.
I'm on the West Coast, incognito.
Wow.
Oh,
This is so international.
Uh, isn't it? We just need, I don't know. You're not in Europe right now, Patrick, so but we need your
I will
European perspective.
I will be back in Europe soon, in
Uh-huh.
2 days.
What are you doing in Philly?
What am I doing in Philly? Meeting Signe.
he did
And
a TED talk last night. He was terrific.
I
Yeah.
so
great.
Yeah.
So what did you think of last night? Not to especially flatter me, but what did you think of the whole? It was a TED Democracy series of events going to the 250 years of independence next year. So I think that was the second TED, and there'll be three more.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And it was actually, I think it was actually interesting because things were said. It was not people were not shy about talking
Yeah.
about the state of things in the US. What did you think? You were in the audience.
Well, I mean, Patrick was fantastic, and he was the first off, so it was obviously downhill from there. But they had the guy. I thought the second guy I didn't.
Oh,
The
birds aren't real. The guy who,
Yeah,
no.
it
What?
was like a little.
So it's no, that was very interesting. That's an amazing story. It's the guy who he created a conspiracy theory that birds aren't real. They are actually drones by the government, and it was like a an art uh, happening that he had going on for years until the time when he actually came out with the whole story. So it was a very interesting way to explore, conspiracy theories and people who believe in them and how they work.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Patrick, well, tell us about your presentation.
Well, what I did is kind of bring people to a little tour of the situation of cartoonists in places where democracy is not striving, to put it mildly, and then jump to the US and make a comparison with the evolution of things here. And I think, sadly, there is a point of comparison. And I mentioned your story, Anne, of course, that was very
Mhm.
prominent in my presentation. And I mentioned you quitting the Washington Post and mentioned that as you know, an act of principle, and just talked about when you compare situations in Turkey or Malaysia and other places, and the fate of cartoonists whom we have supported through the Freedom Cartoonist Foundation, and Anne is a member of the advisory board, awarding them. We have this international prize that we created specifically to salute the courage of cartoonists who speak truth to power. And that was meant for, those countries which are seen as problematic. But now I think the US is very much a point of interest in that
Mhm.
regard. So was that right? That was kind of my story.
Mm-hmm.
And to take those examples are maybe ways to inspire us that in the end, when fear takes hold, in the end, the best antidote to fear is action.
Mm.
and people should act.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I don't know. My perspective is I think they are here in this country anyway, to a certain degree.
Who's the they?
Citizens
Oh,
protesting and getting loud, writing about it. Do you not agree?
well, the third person who spoke last night was a writer for the New Yorker, and he was very strong on that point um, about publishing, and so he did the journalism side of what Patrick said, the written side. He was really good too.
You remember his name?
Matthew, oh, I forgot his name. I'll find it for you.
I hadn't seen his byline before. Yeah, it begins with an M at the last name.
Keep on
Well,
speaking. I'll find it.
Rate.
I was just talking to Michael this morning, Michael Maslin, about how annoying the New York Times is. Uh, and well, forget the Washington Post. That's a given. But I mean,
Yes,
what else is there left? Like the Guardian is not an American newspaper, but I read that. And then the New Yorker and the Atlantic seem to be two places that are picking up the journalistic
oh, here he is.
Yeah,
mantle.
sorry. It's Andrew, I should know, because we spent a few days together. Andrew
Sure.
Marantz, he's one of the speakers.
Okay. Mhm.
Then there was Claire Wardle. You can actually check their TED Talks. They all gave TED Talks.
Okay.
And Peter McIndoe, that's the guy with the birds. The birds aren't real.
So
And
all
then
these will
there
be
was
on the
this.
TED site. They're not there yet, but they will.
They're there. They already gave
Oh,
TED
wow.
Talks. And there's a guy with a French accent. I don't know who that is, but that's it.
He was the first and the best.
That's kind of you. It's because I bought you a drink, right?
Uh-huh. And also, it's nighttime and, you're awake for him. It was good.
Right.
No, all of them were super interesting. So,
That's a hotel lobby, we told you.
yeah. So how about you two? Now that
Yes.
you're home, what did you think about your trip and what are you looking forward to now that you're back?
Your big tour in Europe, which took you to Norway, French part of Switzerland, and Lucerne. You were a star.
Anne. So
and
Anne,
Liza as well.
yeah.
Liza
Well, I
in
went to
Morges,
Paris.
Geneva, and Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Anne,
Yeah,
you go first. You did a lot of speaking to media, right?
I did. Yeah. As Patrick said, I started in Bergen and then went to Morges to meet up with you for our exhibition. And if you haven't seen it yet, go to Liza's site because she has a little video that we did of a walkthrough of the exhibition. And I think it's really good. I think we talk a lot about, just the state of cartooning as well as women's issues, which now that the bill has passed in the House, basically defunding Planned Parenthood might be of interest. So, yeah, and then after Morges, I went to Geneva and saw Patrick, and we did a Q&A there after the screening of a documentary that I was involved with called, what is it called? Oh, God.
Democracy Under Siege.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. I should know that. Democracy Under Siege, which was directed by Laura Nix. And that got a good reception, and we got a lot of questions. The one thing I did notice, Liza, we should probably tell Substack, Substack people that nobody in Europe knows what Substack is.
Yeah, right.
I
Well,
thought that was really interesting. I mean, even in Norway, when I was there and I mentioned it, they're all like, Substack, what's that?
Yeah. No,
So
it's
you know who
it's
just
not well
joined?
known.
Do you know who just joined Substack? Is Kianush, the Iranian, for people who don't know, Iranian cartoonist who now lives in Finland and Paris, I think. But I don't know of any other Europeans on Substack right now.
Well, I mean, and it's just not known over there. Although I had a lot of people asking me and asking me to spell it for them so they could go look it up. But yeah, it was a really good trip. I mean, I felt like the one thing that really struck me is before I went, I was a little bit worried that people, because I was an American and everything that had been happening, that they wouldn't be very friendly. But I have to say, everyone was friendly and wanted to talk and was helpful. So I think Americans should realize that if they're going to travel, that people over there, they're very aware of what's going on, but they're also understand that there's still a lot of Americans that don't support this presidency. And so they shouldn't feel like they can't go travel.
Mhm.
And Anne, you went to Lucerne to the Swiss Media Forum, which I have never been to, but I think you were given the opportunity to speak in front of the largest, at least Swiss media publishers. How
Yes,
did it go?
and
Yeah.
editors, it went well. As you know, as my friends, I'm not, speaking is not my comfort zone. But
Yes, it is.
no, it's not. But
You do
but
it well, but you don't do it internally. You're not comfortable.
no, no, not at all. I'm always sitting there going, should I have a drink before I do this? And no, I don't.
No.
But yeah, it went really well, and I was actually glad to have that opportunity to kind of state my case. As Patrick said, they were publishers and media executives from not just newspapers, but also radio and television.
Mm,
And I spoke about, how important it was for if a cartoonist is going to be part of an organization, and not just a cartoonist, written opinion writers and everyone else in general, you have to support them. You have to support them if there's pushback to things, because as an owner of any of these organizations, of a newspaper, especially the one that I left, you're there to protect a free press. You have an obligation. It's
mm,
not just having a business that makes money. Sure, they want to
mm.
make money, but it is part of a free press and a democracy. And I said that during my talk. So, I was really glad that when I do these talks, I don't wear my distance glasses because I couldn't see anyone's reaction to it. But I made my case, and I heard from people afterwards that, they took notice.
Uh,
Interesting
that's
that
good.
came up.
Who was in the audience?
It
What
was
was the audience?
It was publishers of newspapers and heads of television, as well as radio, from Switzerland. So all the big Switzerland executives. Is that correct,
That was
Pat?
it. That was in Lucerne. But
That was in Lucerne. Yeah.
2 days before that, Anne was speaking in front of I mean, it was packed. It was fully packed. We had a theater for the projection of the film, and it was fully booked in 2 hours. And then we had to open another theater with a live transmission of the film and the debate. So this is to tell you not only Anne's popularity, but the interest in
The topic.
situation of the US.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah, yeah.
people are very worried in Europe, but very interested in hearing about you guys, about your perspective. And so the interest was huge. And Liza joined us on stage in Geneva. And Liza, give us your feelings about your trip in Europe. You went to
Well, the same
Morges,
thing.
Geneva, and Paris.
The same thing with that Anne just said is that first in Moorish, she and I did 2 different days. We did little mini dialogues with the public that came to see the exhibit that we're both in of our political cartoons, and there were at three times in 2 days, groups of people that were maybe 6 to 8 to 10 people, and they were kind of riveted. They just really wanted to know from us what's going on, and are you guys doing anything? And should we be worried? Yes, they should, but um, they and Patrick, I think I got this from you as well, that it seems like they feel like they're not getting enough information about what's going on over here. Of course, they get the headlines about Trump, but they don't necessarily hear the on the ground stuff that's going on, or the behind, the Democrats that are doing some good things to bring change. So that was interesting. I didn't expect that kind of level of interest. And the same thing with your audience in Geneva. They were
Mm.
really hungry to hear what we were witnessing. I guess the conversations were less about the craft of what we do and more about like, what are you guys seeing? What are you guys hearing? What are you
Mhm.
Yeah.
knowing? So we didn't.
Mm.
What's also interesting, Anne and I noted this afterwards, is that we're women cartoonists, editorial cartoonists, as is Signe, of course, Pulitzer Prize winners both. But that was not really discussed at all, and that's fine. That's good, actually. It's
That's
good.
good. Yeah.
You mean about gender?
No, we talked about gender problems, but we didn't, nobody really cared or wanted to know, like, oh, you two are women doing this. What's that?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's
that's
really
great.
Which
interesting.
is a good sign.
That's progress.
Yes,
Yep. So,
yes, total.
of course, there's other major news that's taking precedence to that glass ceiling that we're trying to break. But yeah. And in Paris, I went
It's
for fun, and I didn't really do anything political there.
But she did some great sketches, so you have to go to her Substack to see
Yeah, I
them.
drew live on the street. I drew for Parisians walking around.
and we should just explain that Morges, you were in Morges because in Morges, Switzerland, which is let's say 30 minutes from Geneva by Lake Geneva, there is a Maison du Dessin Press. There is a editorial cartoon museum, which
Mhm.
is a permanent place. There's not so many of them, so that's good to salute. It's been there for, I don't know, did I tell you, 15 years maybe?
Mm.
And there is a big project in France, in Paris, of one editorial cartoon museum. I am on the board of the group, which is trying to figure out and prepare this. And hopefully, I mean, the place has been picked. So hopefully in 2 years, this Maison du Dessin de Presse, editorial cartooning house, will open in Paris. And the ambition is to be international. And that's why I, as a Swiss, I am in their board and trying to work with them to make it really a place for us all.
Yeah.
Not only
Great idea.
and to be a place of advocacy and defending and having also the conversations we are having in those different venues, being able to bring in speakers, people like you from the US and from other places, and bring their perspective to the situation in their country and the situation of political cartooning.
Yeah, it's like an extension of cartooning for peace, right?
Exactly.
Did either of you end up talking about where cartoons or who's carrying cartoons now? Who's actually supporting you? Is it Substack now, or is it are they actually publications in the old-fashioned sense of things, or is it just online, and does anyone pay for them?
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask about that, but in my experience, I mean, I still work for the New Yorker, and I do non-political cartoons for them. Occasionally, a political cartoon, but they're different kinds of political cartoons than what you guys do. But Substack has become for me and I think, and writers that I know, a living. It's new model that people who are going to be watching this are subscribers to Substack, so they know this, but it's a way for people to support creatives because they know, these people know how bad the legacy corporate media has been and is becoming. So they want to donate. I don't use a paywall at all. They just want contributes, and I make a good living at it now because of that. So that's
Great.
that's
How often do you post?
well, I post every day. I have a different kind of style than say Anne does because I write and I'm conversational and interact with my readers, but I also publish cartoons. So I decided I took the advice from Heather Cox Richardson, who's a historian who's very, very successful on Substack. She does it every day, and I thought that's probably the way to go. Going to get viewership and to engage a community. It's a community of people. So I don't think there's many places to sell little cartoons anymore.
But Patrick and I talked a little bit about this. I think still in Patrick's world, it's more legacy media, correct?
Yes, that in my case, and maybe Europe is a bit behind the US or ahead of the US, depending on if the economic situation or let's say not that only, but the respect towards cartooning. We'll see which way it goes, but it's still, I think there's still respect for cartooning in Europe. And as I was telling Signe, the fact that I am on the front page of a newspaper in Geneva, the fact that Plantu was on the front page of Le Monde in Paris, and Le Monde still has cartoons on their front page, that's a sign of respect and of consideration for what we do that you don't see much anymore in the US, sadly, because of what happened also to you at the Washington Post, because of the fact that the New York Times 6 years ago dropped all political cartoons and my contract in the process. Things have gone really in the wrong direction in the US. There is still a space for cartooning in Europe, I would say.
But the thing about it, as far as newspapers, is that nobody gets a newspaper anymore, and very, very few. I mean, I look in my neighborhood where, you know, in the morning I go out to get my newspaper, and I mean, almost nobody has one plopped on their front porch. And and if you go, like, even to a train station, you don't see people picking up a newspaper. And the pile of newspapers if they still sell them, is just as high at 5 in the evening as it is at 5 in the morning. I just don't think people read on paper anymore.
Sure, but I mean, they have adapted to, you know, the web landscape. The New York Times, New York Times has reached more than 10 million subscribers, most of them online. So that's a huge success. I think their goal was they surpassed their goal. If they still were having editorial cartoons, I mean, we would be seeing we would have like a large impact through that. But sadly, they're making the choice of caution, and they don't want to deal with controversy anymore, and they just don't want to deal with decisions that go with editorial cartoons.
Well, I agree with that, but like the Philadelphia Inquirer does have online, and it does publish cartoons online with their page, but you don't have the same effect of one cartoon in the same place that you look for every day, because you want to know what Ann Telnis is going to do today, or Patrick, or Liza.
Well, but I think going back to Patrick's point, I mean, you know, the death of print is a reality, you know, and news is online now. That's
absolutely
where young people get their news. But, you know, going back to Patrick's point about, you know, I think that cartoons for him in his country and in Europe, they tend to gather more respect than what we have. So, I mean, honestly, you know, if the New York Times started printing an editorial cartoon on their home page every day, it had the same effect as having the one on the printed page in the front. But they don't do that either, you know. So I think the problem is it's not the medium, it's the way they're looking at editorial cartoons and their place in journalism.
Right. And I think you know, I love the New Yorker, and they've always done political cartoons. I've done some of them for them over the years, and they're not hard hitting like the same way that you guys do.
Well, no, but Liza, the front, the cover of the New Yorker, everybody looks to that. I mean, it's not always political, but when it is political, it's the talk, right?
Well, that's the difference. But the cartoons that have they're online, they're in the magazine still. They're dotted around, and the ones in the print edition are usually not political anymore. So they put the political cartoons on the daily cartoon, which is when they have political cartoon. And they've relegated them to the bottom of the online version of the New Yorker, so that you know, instead of going
look at that
to the Le Monde and seeing seeing Plantu's or the Geneva paper and seeing Patrick's cartoon right there with the commentary and with the news, you have to go down to the bottom of the New Yorker website and find the cartoons and scroll through them like they're a form of entertainment, really.
But again, let's hope it's not the destiny of cartoons to slowly disappear. The New York Times dared for a while, when the same year they stopped publishing political cartoons and they cut my contract. I had been working for them for 18 years, first through the International Herald Tribune, and just in 2018, just a year before they stopped, we we had the cartoons on their websites, and we had started translating them on the Chinese and the Spanish websites. And when you think of it, I mean, we were making progress in terms of the exposure of political cartooning, because when you think of it, in China, in the whole China, there is nobody doing this work. It's just not possible. That does not exist in autocracies. And it is just sad every time we see a space of freedom being closed down. And that's the worry. I mean, that's what I said yesterday is, again, when fear takes hold, and it seems to be taking hold in the US, you don't need censorship anymore, because self-censorship does the job in its place. Right. And that's what happened with the Washington Post, and that's happening across the US in local newspapers, which no longer want to or dare to print cartoons critical of the current administration.
Is there a way that we cartoonists, or you cartoonists and the old retirees, could publicize this outside of just wherever we happen to be speaking, or figure out a way of making a big deal about it, having like a day of cartoons about journalism and humor. No humor allowed. In politics, not humorous. Don't ask.
Well, I like that. Yeah, I mean,
something that together, and Patrick and other cartoonists around the world could all do some at the same time. I don't know.
There's an idea.
Is there some way we're a visual medium? Can we get our visuals out to have impact on our situation as cartoonists, and what people are missing without cartoonists?
I wonder if there's Substack comes to mind, doing something with them. They have live events all the time. We talked about doing live, and Ann and I are going to do live here. This is not live. And they do,
thankfully,
they do events in public. I mean, they do, you could also, this is just Substack. You could also do page of drawings on Substack. And then you got me thinking, Signe, I could write it. We could write an editorial for some newspaper, although I don't know who would publish it, whether the Times would want to do that.
Oh yes, let's put it in the Times.
Yeah, right. Yes. When you were fired, Patrick, I contacted my editor at the New York Times, and I said I'd love to do an editorial about this because I've written op-ed pieces for them. And she said, I don't think they'll publish it, but she said you could do an op-ed piece. Or, I'm sorry, a letter to the editor. So I drew a cartoon to the editor, and they published that about the situation.
I didn't see that. That's great.
So they would not publish an op-ed piece by me, but they did do the letter. Anyway, that's a great idea, Signe.
Yes, let us think about it.
Yeah. Well, we've been half an hour now. Do we want to wrap this up?
I think
a little nice bow.
Great to see you both, and Patrick.
Yes, great to see you.
Congratulations, Patrick, on your talk. I'm going to go look for it now and listen.
It was fantastic. It was really, really good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was. He was the first, and then I went to sleep afterwards. No, I did not.
You know what? I had in mind that you can't do a TED Talk with notes. So I had to memorize everything, but then all of the other speakers had notes.
Yes, they did. The old fogies.
So
I know, that's not fair. I did the same thing, Patrick. I memorized my TED Talk.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't do that. I'd blank.
Well, they had these little cards.
Yeah,
they had they're Substack cards. They were little stacks.
Actual ones.
Seriously, that they would, that they held, but very inconspicuously, and acted like they weren't reading off of them. And they were all really good. Yeah. None as good as he was, but they were all interesting. They had their token woman.
Only one woman?
But
And I am the token man today.
Yeah.
Please notice.
This is
yeah,
true.
but the other thing about it was the audience was entirely white. There may
Was it?
have been
Couldn't see the audience.
8 Black people in the audience.
What do you attribute that to,
That's a
Sydney?
problem.
Is that Ted, the
Because-
Ted problem?
It appeals to a certain demographic.
Mm-hmm.
It appeals to the convinced, maybe, and that's
Right.
that's another problem.
It's a whole nother Zoom call about silos.
Yes,
All right, well, let's
it was good talking to you.
great to talk to you guys. I will put this on my Substack and I'll put bios of you guys there so everybody knows who you are.
Oh, well, great to see you
Guys.
both.
Likewise.
right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Nice.